John-Paul Langbroek was elected as the member for Surfers Paradise in 2004 and currently serves as the Shadow Minister for the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Candidature, Sport and Racing, and Multicultural Affairs for the LNP, the Liberal National Party. John-Paul, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Look, restrictions for the Gold Coast have been eased with gathering limits extended to 30 people and hospital and aged care visits now permitted. Plus further restrictions will be eased, including lifting the limits on the number of people allowed at outdoor dining venues across the state from October 1. But border restrictions are still in place. Many restrictions will remain until the 1st of October. How has the government managed to hoodwink us to think that they're acting in our interest?
Well, it's certainly very frustrating. Even your description there of how things have changed, Mike, really shows the confusion that a lot of local business owners, residents and tourists must feel when they're trying to get out at night or go out to enjoy what we have to offer here on the Gold Coast. The Labor government clearly has almost given up on the Gold Coast in terms of the effect on tourism, and they've done that because I think of their emphasis on Brisbane, and that's a place where they hold lots of seats. It's not known for its tourism particularly, and Anastasia Palaszczuk really has just been trying to hammer this "we've been keeping you safe" line, but unfortunately with the restrictions that have come across in all sorts of ways, there are lots of businesses here on the Gold Coast where there's a massive feeling of not just frustration, but also angst and a lot of mental anguish happening amongst people who are trying to live their lives and heading backwards in terms of their finances.
There'll be some bad economic indicators, local, state and national, over the next 6 to 12 months at least. How do we best manage the fallout?
Well, I think that the federal government is showing a lot of leadership here. So whether it's Scott Morrison or Josh Frydenberg or our local members here on the Gold Coast, Angie Bell, Karen Andrews and Stuart Robert and Scott Buchholz, who also has part of the Gold Coast, have obviously been lobbying very hard. And that's where we've seen a recent announcement of $10 million to help our local tourism product to be advertised and promoted. So along with things like Job Seeker and Job Keeper, that's really what's keeping the economy afloat. But it's a false sense of security that I think the Queensland Labor Government will be getting, because they're not contributing anything like what the federal government is contributing. And of course, as Job Keeper, and Job Seeker, which have reduced from just a couple of days ago, then is removed, when those things are removed at the end of March, we really are going to hit a bit of a cliff, I think, and unfortunately it's the Labor state government that have led us to this issue, because they were the last to give small business any grants, or even the grants that they've given were massively oversubscribed, and they haven't done the heavy lifting that the federal government has.
Further state lockdowns in the face of maybe another wave, just impractical?
Well, that would be completely impractical and would be the death knell for thousands of businesses. I think the statistics are very promising at the moment to see the rapid elimination, or not elimination, but the rapid decline in the number of cases. In New South Wales, where I think they've had no cases for 2 days in a row, and of course here where we've had very few cases over the last couple of months. But it's almost like the state Labor government is like the boogeyman that you all remember when you were children. That they just keep saying, oh no, we don't want to release, we don't want to relax, we don't want to let go. After a while, it becomes like the boy who cried wolf. Queenslanders were prepared to do what it was that we had to do from March through April and into May. But unfortunately, the state Labor government are trying to play this all the way to October 31st. And Queenslanders are practical people, in my experience. They just say, well, we didn't have 30,000 die. We didn't want 30,000 to die. And the 850 or so Australians who have died are tragic. And the 6 Queenslanders who've died, that's also always an individual tragedy and a family tragedy. But let's not gild the lily. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to doing what Australians do best. After something like this, it's a once in a century issue. Let's get back to building our economy and getting jobs for our kids and for all of us.
The federal government has just announced more regional tourism grants. What type of activity or investments in tourism and non-tourism sectors are really critical to economic recovery?
Well, as we've already mentioned, those grants are something that shows the great leadership and the listening ability of Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg, which has been coordinated, of course, through our local MPs. I think when it comes to the detail, we have been promoting in Queensland that we thought there needed to be the $200 million that was going to be given to trying to bail out Virgin. Our proposal was that it should go to also promotions and marketing. We need to help the airports, of course, where that's a significant issue, where it's just quite bizarre, Mike, when you walk through either Gold Coast Airport or Cairns Airport, where I was a couple of weeks ago. It's almost like being in a mausoleum. And the airports really are the arteries to bringing people to Queensland. And so, as well as tourism and marketing promotion, we need to make sure that we are helping people to get here, apart from on our roads. And the airports are the only way they can get there at the moment. But it's been very significant, the costs to people in that sector. And so the promotional money has to be considered across a raft of ideas. I know Destination Gold Coast has been proposing that Mayor Tom Tate should have a significant say. And of course, as the leader in the city, I think that would make a lot of sense to have him and his economic development team make suggestions as to where that money that's been given by the federal government should actually be targeted.
Is more government funding, though, always the answer for the tourism sector? I mean, money is, sure, it's going to help, but you've got to, as you said before, you've got to know what to do with it.
That's true, and that's why under the LNP government that I was a part of and I was Education Minister, we started a tourism forum every year to make sure that we could get tourism operators, large and small, together, because the complexity of the tourism market is that they're not government funded necessarily, but they often need government money for promotion. And that means whether you're a small operator with a small business taking small groups, or whether you're the theme parks or the airports, they're all an important part of making sure that tourism's strong. And you can't really have, those individual operators may be doing their own forms of promotion, but I think everyone acknowledges that, especially at the moment, that special funds were needed, and that's why the government has made this announcement specifically for the Gold Coast of $10 million, and that's the area that I'm most interested in. But we always look, tourism operators are very resilient. At those conferences that I used to attend where I was Minister for Education and Training, because of course it was my responsibility in my department to deliver training needs for many people in tourism, whether it was Cert 3s or Cert 4s across a range of areas. They're resilient, so you've got to give them what they want so we can give the customers what they want. But at this stage, I don't think anyone would be quibbling with the federal government giving this money for the moment to try to resuscitate our struggling tourism sector.
Hospitality has been hit hard by the virus. Do you see any bright spots locally that are primed for growth?
One of the great things about people in those sectors is how tough they are. I just know, because having been a small business operator myself, they're not reliant on government. They really just want government to get out of the way. And here on the Gold Coast, where we have, I think, about 40,000 small businesses, most of those operators have very, very little to do with government. They might fill out their business activity statement every quarter, but apart from that, they really don't have a lot to do with government. They rely on their own businesses, and the Gold Coast is a classic example of this. Whilst it's a Queensland city, it's really, I think, an archetypal Australian city where everyone has come from somewhere else. Yes, there are people who've been born and bred here, but the majority are people who've wanted to come here, stand on their own 2 feet, establish their own businesses, and they don't want government in their way. That's why I think they're frustrated about these border closures when they've done all the right things about trying to maintain hygiene and do all the things the government has said. So the resilience is something that I know that I've seen before, whether it was through the global financial crisis. My history goes all the way back to Expo in 1988.
That's a long time ago.
It is. It's 30 years ago. And I remember traders at the time saying Surfers Paradise was tired and needed reinvigoration. Around the time of the Sydney Olympics in 2000, the GFC in 2009-10, there are always people to take the places of those who retire or move on. And the resilience is something I know that we'll always see. They just need government to get out of the way.
Given the importance of events to our economy, we have a lot of those on the Gold Coast, or used to, do we need to look at things differently this time in terms of what type of events, how they are run or funded to attain the greatest benefit?
That's something that the City of Gold Coast is certainly aware of. They've just brought together the three promotional groups. There was Surfers Paradise Alliance, Broad Beach Alliance, and Connecting Southern Gold Coast. And they brought them together in one body, which commenced on the 1st of July. And that was because we had three bodies with a lot of duplications of roles, and Mayor Tom Tate led that, along with Dale Dixon as CEO of the council. So now there will be a renewed focus on which events are going to be promoted. Of course, Broadbeach has done some great events with jazz and blues and the Country Music Festival. Southern Gold Coast has always done things with the older cars and those sorts of promotions. And of course, Surfers Paradise has regularly had a lot more events because it's the real jewel in the crown. And so whether it's Elvis festivals, whether it's fireworks, movie nights, schoolies, there's lots of events that are funded through levies on traders. But of course, there'll be a renewed focus on making sure that those traders who are spending their hard-earned money or having it taken by council are getting good value for whatever events that are promoted. But one of the things that we've always done very well here is to build events up that end up being something that are unique to the Gold Coast, whether it's those events in Broadbeach or the ones that we've all been to in Surfers Paradise, and even at the southern end of the Gold Coast. And those are the things that define the coast and make people want to come here regularly on weekends. So we've become an events destination, but you always need to be refining what you're doing.
What's the main issue for Surfers Paradise for the elections? Take away the border issues and COVID.
Crime, Mike. Crime has become an epidemic over the last 6 months. So at first, during lockdown, I think the whole country and the whole state wasn't really moving very far. But then, because our police have been so focused on quarantine, the quarantine hotels, of which there are now 4, and also maintaining our borders without an increased allocation of police officers here on the Gold Coast, it's meant that throughout the suburbs of Surfers Paradise and other areas of the Gold Coast, my parliamentary colleagues and I have never had so many engagements with our constituents. So I'm on Facebook connected to a lot of local community groups, and I know that they're having issues with car theft, break-ins to their houses. You only have to lie in bed at night wherever you are on the Gold Coast, if it's near any suburban road, and you will hear hooning and traffic noise from loud exhausts where people seem to be hooning much more because they're aware that there are no traffic police. So I know from my contacts with local police that they are frustrated with the fact they're not able to do any beat police, which means, when you're in London and you love seeing bobbies on the beat, we haven't seen any of that in Surfers Paradise over the last couple of months. And unfortunately, last week, of course, we had 2 stabbings, which are just terrible to talk about, but we have to face the facts. And those issues of crime throughout the electorate and throughout the city are of real concern. And unfortunately, it's also leading to more awareness because of the fact there are fewer people in Surfers Paradise. The prevalence and obviousness of homelessness has become quite stark. So there were a lot of issues with homelessness in Southport on the other side of what we call the Sundale Bridge, because there are a lot of services that are provided there by the council and by a lot of community groups who offer food and meals and clothing in Lawson Street, Southport. But unfortunately, that will be a real detriment to reinvigorating tourism in Surfers Paradise if something's not done. So I've met with a number of local councillors, Darren Taylor, Brooke Patterson, newly elected councillors, along with Rob Mulhook, the member for Southport, and Angie Bell, who's our member for Moncrief. So that's coordinating all 3 levels of government, along with people who want to help, like Rotary clubs, looking for some sort of solutions. But unfortunately, once again, whilst I sound like a cracked record, the state Labor government hasn't been giving enough of the federal funding that they get every year to helping issues of public housing and homelessness on the Gold Coast. And unfortunately, it's those of us who live here who are then affected by the frustration of those homeless people who are often drug or alcohol affected and have got other mental health issues as well. So that's something that needs to be looked at as well.
And one final question, this is a big one for you. Who do you think will win the election this year?
Well, I've been now in 7 elections, Mike, and I've won 6 of them.
That's very
One
good.
of the things that I've learned over 17 years in the Parliament is I try not to worry about the outcome of the election. I try to do the work locally that has enabled me to win 6 elections, and then as part of a team, that I'm confident the team is doing a great job under Deb Frecklington and Tim Mander to make sure that we can then win across the state. I think that there is a sense that the issues that we're speaking about, which is about the economy and getting Queensland working again and making sure that our kids can get to their schools, universities and training so they can get on with being an important part of our economy, is something that's resonating with a lot of Queenslanders who are also concerned about some of the stories that are coming out about waste from the Labor government, who really have got no plan for the future. They're only talking about the COVID-19 crisis and thinking that we should all vote for them because we've supposedly been kept safe. As I've said to you before, I think Queenslanders are smarter than that. So I'm confident on October 31st we'll have a great result, but we need to do the work all the way for the next 4 weeks and 4 days till we get there.
Popular month. In fact, that week, very popular around the world for elections. My fingers are crossed for everything.
For horse racing as well. Melbourne Cup is on 3 days after. In fact, I think October 31st is Derby Day, so that's going to be very different because I'm Shadow Minister for Racing, so I've got a particular interest there. Halloween that day, so...
Maybe the theme for the election could be trick or treat.
Well, that's what we'll be saying because, of course, we've got lots of treats. We think that Labor have just got lots of tricks.
Indeed. Well said. For a dentist and a politician, thank you very much, John-Paul.
Great to talk to you, Mike. Thanks.